sad. What really makes us sad here at the Sad Fan is last week we did a terrific show for you covering March Madness, covering the drama between UConn, South Carolina's head coaches Geno Auriemma and Don Staley. We did a little bit of commentary on the state of the NBA and tanking and what it's done to the league and who's next. But unfortunately, we had some recording issues where the audio was dropped within 2 minutes of the show. We apologize. We've got it up. We're looking at it. So for Riverside, if you are listening, I'm staring directly at the levels. It looks like it is being recorded right now. But that is gone. Last week has already passed, and we are on to a new one. We're going to start where we should start, congratulating the UCLA Lady Bruins in their first women's national championship. Congratulations, Betts, Jaquez, and all the other seniors on this team that stayed together and pulled off a drubbing of South Carolina in the championship game. Could it have been high tensions in the previous game between South Carolina and UConn? That high attitude, high emotion game that can sometimes take it out of athletes going into the next round? Yeah, it absolutely could have been, because just to rehash what was on the show last week, we did see some drama between Don Staley and Geno Auriemma. And there were excuses made for Geno, but we're here to tell you this is who Geno has always been. This is who Geno is. Geno Auriemma is the drama. Okay, it is him. It's no one else. He had the same thing going on with Pat Summitt when the Lady Volunteers were his number one competition. He always has these issues, and it's silly that we're acting like this is brand new, or that we are acting brand new to this, because obviously this is a history thing with Geno. He had an amazing team, and the amazing team got beat, and he couldn't handle it. And he can blame it on Don Staley didn't hug me at the court, at half court before the game. And, there's a tradition where we've got to shake hands, and she kept me. Shut up, man. That's not what it was at all. It's your petty bullshit. And you've always had this petty bullshit since the dawn of time, since the dawn of your career. You are this person. This is who you are. And we know it, you know it, so just accept it, own it, so we can move on. You acted like a child. And in acting like a child, you took away from not only the South Carolina Gamecocks, who won that game handily, but you took away from the national championship winning Bruins. And the story was made about you, which I guess is one strategy to keep your name in the news for recruiting. But at this point in time, I don't think UConn has any issues recruiting. It's not going to be something that troubles them. UConn has a legacy of winning. And yes, it is under Geno. He is also responsible for that winning. But you have to accept everything that comes along with it, which is we see you, Geno Auriemma. We know who you are. We know how you act. And we know how you treat people. And we know how you believe yourself to be as far as the pantheon of coaches is concerned. And you believe you have earned a certain level of respect. But the end of the day means we don't have to do that. Not everybody has to adhere to what you think you've earned. In fact, no one does in any walk of life. So why would you be any different? Granted, we'll say, yeah, you're a great coach. Yeah, you've accomplished a lot, but I don't owe you shit, especially if you're not the reason for my success. I don't know that Geno Auriemma has pushed the game as far forward as characters like Don Staley, Asia Wilson, Candace Parker, all the way up to Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd. I don't know that he's pushed the game as far as they have, right? The Cheryl Swoops, Don Staley's of the world. All right, I said Don Staley, I apologize. But if we actually look at it, yeah, you're a champion coach and you should be recognized as such, but that is it. That is all you have earned, is to be recognized as a championship coach. And after what you pulled after that game, I don't think that we should be considering you for much more than that. It was nonsense. You operate in a realm of nonsense, and you will be treated as someone that operates in a realm of nonsense. All right? Now, for UCLA, they showed just what sticking together for 4 years can do, because this team was in it, and it just happens that it works out in their senior year, that's the year they win the championship. And you hope that that trickles down into their recruiting, that trickles down into all the players that have jumped on to the UCLA Bruins team because of the core that exists there, because of the coach that exists there. And now you're hoping that they can garner more attention, gather more recruiting ammunition to propel them forward. Now, as far as next year is concerned, UConn looks very good again. UCLA is obviously not going to be quite as good. A majority of this team was built on senior players. So you're going to have a little bit of a rebuilding year at UCLA. They're trying to get to that level that some of these other teams are at, the UConns, the South Carolinas. And to do that, they need to create consistency like they've had over these last 4 years. And now the expectations are significantly higher as it pertains to that consistency. The expectations are we need to be Elite Eight, Final Four every single year. And we need to make sure that everyone knows this is who we are so that way we land these big name recruits. That way these players, we are not chasing them. They're chasing us trying to make our team. That's the ground that UCLA finds themselves on now. Speaking of that, Michigan won the men's national championship. And in doing so, they won me my first ever bracket. In fact, they won me 2 this year. I won 2 brackets. I'd never won a bracket before. But this year, the power of Michigan propelled me to my first 2 championship brackets. So thank you, Michigan Wolverines, for that. But what we need to examine here is something a little bit more interesting. And that is that Michigan and Dusty May rolled out 5 transfer players in their starting lineup. They started the championship game with 5 transfer players. And all of these players are fantastic and performed great throughout the tournament. But what we want to look at here more closely is what does this do for the game moving forward? How does this impact the game? Is this going to be a situation where more teams can see themselves in a position like Michigan and say, hey, if Michigan can do this with 5 transfer players, why can't we? What's stopping us from doing the exact same thing? Why can't we roll out our money mat, our bank account, and bring in transfer players and go exactly to where Michigan got to? We're already starting to see it with teams like BYU. BYU is backing up the Brinks truck to college athletes that are transferring, backing it up to high school recruits. Like I said before, earlier in the year, BYU, oddly enough, has the #1 recruit in the country committed to their school already for next year's basketball season. So does this mean that teams like Creighton, the teams like Portland, the teams like St. Mary's, Gonzaga are now going to see what Michigan did and really, really play in that transfer portal? Are they going to change the way that college basketball is recruited, change the way that college basketball is played? Are we going to start to see more second, third, and fourth year players in this tournament simply because we just saw it work at Michigan? It didn't work with one and dones. It worked with 2, 3, and 4 year players that are transfers. And it got them a national championship. And not just a national championship, it was a dominant performance by Michigan throughout these NCAA games, throughout this bracket, throughout March Madness. Michigan looked like a team of destiny all the way through the tournament, all the way up to the championship game. The championship game was the worst game in the entire tournament that Michigan played. Okay, so this is proof of concept, I think. And I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot more parity in the game of college basketball because everyone knows they can get in this game. And it's not like football where you need 22 players. You need 5 players that you can roll onto that court and a good coach. If you can get 5 really good players and roll them onto a court, you have a shot. Just look at the University of Miami. They played with like 8 players this year. They basically ran their players into the ground because they didn't have anyone else. And a lot of these were transfer players. Okay. So that's what Miami was doing this year. And if Miami was able to do it with such a tiny roster as far as players actually getting in the game, why can't anyone else? So I believe you're going to start to see a trend here from this Michigan victory and from this year's March Madness of teams looking at the transfer portal as a better way to get rich quick because Michigan won that championship And no matter how you think about it, that's what matters. Nobody's going to remember how you did it at the end of the day in 10 years. They're going to remember that you were the champion in 2026 for the 2025-2026 college basketball season. All right. So I don't blame teams moving into this era of NIL, moving into this world of, hey, I'm going to get in on this NIL game because I want to compete at the highest level, no matter what my school is. Dusty May came from FAU, where FAU made a Final Four run. So if he can bring FAU with the talent that FAU has, and I mean, I'm sorry for FAU catching a stray, but it's true, then of course he was going to be able to do this with a team like Michigan, with the resources like Michigan. Michigan was in the Frozen Four this year as well. They win a national championship in college basketball, and a couple years ago, they won the college football national championship right before Jim Harbaugh left. So I'm thinking Michigan is in the catbird seat as far as recruiting across sports is concerned, as across revenue streams is concerned. They are sitting at the head of the table because they are the university that is producing champions, that is producing opportunities for championships, that is producing players that are going to go to the next level and succeed. And if you are that university, players are going to want to come there. And that goes back to what we were talking about with UCLA. Winning championships brings recognition and eyeballs to your program, and it makes players want to go there because players see it as an opportunity to get out there and win games, win championships, and get their names in the big lights. So this is what we're saying for Michigan. They have now created a path for all universities to compete, and I think they're going to take that path. I think, like I said earlier, you're going to see transfer. Just get used to it because this is the new world you live in. Sports fans, college sports fans, you live in a transfer portal world where the universities with the most money and the players with the highest social media follower count are going to get the recruiting, they're going to get the money, and they're going to get the championships. Can you live with that? Because you need to make a decision because that's the era we live in. All right, so on to the NBA. This has been, what a year for the NBA. Wembanyama really had a coming out party this year with the San Antonio Spurs, who look like what might be the only team outside of the Denver Nuggets that's going to be able to compete with the amazing champion Oklahoma City Thunder, deep Oklahoma City Thunder, because they've been able to do so all year long. Now, granted, the few times that they played the Oklahoma City Thunder were hurt, and they didn't have their full battery of weapons to throw at the San Antonio Spurs. But I don't know that that's going to matter because the San Antonio Spurs are pretty deep in their own right. And I don't think that a lot of people are realizing that. It's like the shadow of Victor Wembanyama blocks out all the rest of what's going on, which is this is actually a pretty deep and decent San Antonio Spurs team. This is not just the Victor Wembanyama's. He just makes them that much better. He makes them that much more competitive. He gives them a dimension that no other team in the NBA has that's going to keep them in a position to compete for a championship for the next 10 or more years. And I don't think there's very many teams on the East or in the East, that are going to be able to compete with the West. The top of the West is significantly more powerful than the top of the East. And I know Detroit, what a coming out party for the Detroit Pistons this year. But even after a collapsed lung and Cade Cunningham coming out and showing everybody who he still is, I don't believe in the Pistons. This might be that maiden voyage for the Pistons, but not a good one. This may be that maiden voyage that ends in disaster because eventually they are going to hear the siren song and they are going to bail from their ship and try to swim to shore. But there is not glory on these shores waiting for them. I think the Pistons are going to face a harsh reality this year that is, hey, they're not a good enough shooting team to make it far in the NBA playoffs. They are not a veteran enough team to make it far in these NBA playoffs. They have not experienced enough hardship to make it far in these NBA playoffs. I don't think that anybody's very scared of the Detroit Pistons. And then we move on to the Boston Celtics. But look what happened to the Boston Celtics last year in the NBA playoffs. The Boston Celtics last year in the NBA playoffs, before Jason Tatum got hurt, people forget this. They like to mention, well, Jason Tatum got hurt. Before Jason Tatum got hurt, they were getting worked by the New York Knicks. Absolutely worked by the New York Knicks. And now, this year, they're going into it with a different strategy, Jason Tatum coming off injury. But I think we're going to get the same result here. I don't know that Jaylen Brown is going to be a player that's going to be able to carry the Boston Celtics to a NBA championship. It doesn't appear so to me. I don't know why it is I'm gathering this, but honestly, you go as your shooting goes if you're Boston. These are just facts. If you start missing threes, you're going to be a team that is not in the top 5 in offensive production. This is the case for them. They don't have an amazing game outside of that. We're going to shoot the highest volume of three-point shots that the NBA has ever seen, even more than the Splash Brothers, with athletes that are not quite as good as the Warriors were in their prime. Okay, teams are going to put up defenses to stop that. Now, the other thing is the Boston Celtics are still a top 10 defense in the NBA. That, if they can rely on that, if they can lean on that, then Joe Mazzulla might have something. But I don't see Joe Mazzulla as this great coach. He's a coach that's been around for a little bit now. He's a championship coach. Brad Stevens is a great GM, but I don't think that we're living in a world where this team has gotten better since their championship run. I think they've gotten worse and they've gotten older. This season might look like an anomaly by the time these playoffs are done, because I don't think we're going to see them make it all the way into the Eastern Conference Finals. I really like the Cleveland Cavaliers at the 4 seed. I think that this is a team that has now suffered enough. This is a team that has some veterans that they're like, this is our shot. And if Mobley can take over as the superstar that he has the intangibles to become, then this team could be very tough to stop. They've been in the playoffs now a few years in a row. They were a little bit better last year than they were the year before, and I think they're going to be better this year. I think that Cleveland is a team that scares me. It scares me more than the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks now have expectations year in and year out that they're going to be able to do something. And I just don't think they are. I don't think that they're that team. I don't think that outside of Brunson or Hart, that they really have that dog in them. All right, that's going to get this job done. I like Cleveland, and I think that New York is ripe for an upset this year. I think New York had their little run last year. That was the New York run, and it did not culminate in a championship. So not much movement on that roster since then. So what do you have to be hopeful for? Knicks fans, just enjoy this ride that you're on, okay? Because I don't think you're going to have another one like it this year. We're looking at really Cleveland and Boston are the teams to beat, and I already talked to you about Boston. You already know. I want to throw a little sleeper in there, Charlotte Hornets. I think the Charlotte Hornets, very young, kind of reminiscent of the Thunder a couple years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I think that they can get in there and make some noise. They are not scary as far as championship is concerned, but they are a team that can make some noise. But I'm also not sleeping on the 76ers. So I think this play-in bracket on the East, this could be a lot of fun, and it could determine a lot about what's going to happen next in the NBA and how these playoffs shake out. Finally, let's get to the Golden State Warriors, finishing with a terrible record. The first time they've had a losing record since they made a terrible mistake and they drafted Wiseman over LaMelo Ball. All right? What were they thinking? Who knows? It was literally one of the worst picks and will go down as one of the worst picks in NBA history. And we only 10 years from now will we be able to say, hey, that was awful. What a bunch of fools for making that pick. But the reason we're going to focus on them is because if they don't do something in this offseason to improve this roster, they're going to waste the Steph Curry years that we have left. And we still have a few years left of vintage Steph Curry, of amazing Steph Curry. And what they need to do, to quote Jordan Poole, is get that giant backpack off of him and Draymond Green. Draymond Green needs to be moved, and they need to use that salary, that money that they free up from moving Draymond Green to fill the holes that surround Stephen Curry, to surround Stephen Curry with talent that he can work with to get this team to the next level, because it is time for this team to ascend to the next level. Enough is enough with these Golden State Warriors. Dunleavy, you have wasted enough time. It is now time to be held to account for your terrible decision making. You have done nothing. You are nothing without Steph Curry. Do not waste him. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week. This has been The Sad Fan, and we will see you next time.